Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our TPN Tax Talks webinar, Save Your Tax Season with the Cloud, where Christine will give you quick tips you can easily implement in your practice today to make your processes more automated and efficient. My name is Gary Dehart, and I'm the publisher of Tax Practice News and the host of today's short 30-minute or so webinar, and our speaker is Christine Gervais. I'll turn this over to her in just a minute. She'll tell you her own bio and kind of what brings her here. A couple of housekeeping items. CPE is not available for this session. It's a 30-minute session, so you got to start off with an hour to get CPE, and these are only 30 minutes. So if you do have any questions, we ask you to put them into that questions panel. We will be monitoring those. And just if you have a specific question about something that Christine says, make sure you address that in the question. So don't say, "What did you mean by that?" Because she might not answer the question for 10 minutes. So you would need to say, "What did you mean when you said the sky is blue?" so that she knows what you're referencing. The link to the recording will be sent to you, and it can also be found on our YouTube channel, which I will drop that into the chat once I turn this over to Christine. Then I will also put the slides into the chat as well. And then you will receive both of those, the slides and then that link, in a follow-up email within 24 hours. Usually it goes out, I think, about this time tomorrow. So without any further delay, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Christine. Thank you so much for being here, and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Gary, and welcome, everyone. Hopefully everybody survived the March 15th deadline yesterday, and we're just going to take a quick little lunch break and talk about how to make you more efficient for the last month of tax season. So give me just 1 minute here. I want to get my presentation up and going, and then we will get everything ready to go. So as Gary mentioned, as I'm getting this up here, just make sure if you have any questions to drop those either in the chat or the Q&A. Oh, let me switch screens here. Get these switched to the right side. Hold on 1 second, technical difficulties. It's what happens when we try and do presentations right after March 15th. Okay, let's see if we can't get this. There we go. Get this on the right side. So as Gary mentioned, my name is Christine Gervais. We're going to talk about some cloud-based solutions today, not a new topic. I'm going to pull up the Q&A window and the chat so that I can keep an eye on those in case you do have any questions as we go through. I see that Gary already put the slides and the YouTube link in the chat there for you. So if you haven't attended one of our tax talks yet, I am the CFO and co-founder of Epiphany Consulting Group. We do white label outsourced tax services for other practices. I do training. I've been a CPA for over 10 years. I've owned my own practice since 2016. And my favorite niche specialty is actually working with cannabis tax clients. But in running my own small practice, I've had lots of successes and lots of failures. And that's one of the reasons why I love sharing with other practitioners to try and help you have your practices be the most successful that they can be as well. So why are we talking about cloud accounting today? It's definitely not a new topic. Obviously, cloud software has been around for a really long time, but I think that what has shifted a lot in the last couple of years, we always talk about post-pandemic now, is that the way that people are doing business looks very different than it did prior to 2020. So there's a lot more remote work that's happening. There's a lot more, I think, understanding from clients, other business partners, that we're going to be doing more remote work, that things are more electronic now. So that means that there's also a lot more software solutions. I remember pre-2020, not everybody knew what Zoom was, and now we have all of these different video conferencing options. We run our practice fully remotely, so that means that we are doing everything via video conference. We're completely electronic, nothing is done in paper, and all of that is from the help of cloud-based software. And I will talk to you in a little bit about what some of my favorite solutions are for different things inside of our practice. And we'll talk about what software is best for you, what you're trying to solve for if you're implementing a new cloud-based software. And if you're just not even really sure where to start in terms of assessing your firm and what would be the next step for you implementing some cloud-based software for more efficiencies, we'll talk about that as well. So why we need to talk about this just a little bit more. We talked about remote capabilities. Obviously, we saw with the last couple of years in the pandemic that we were sort of forced, many of us, into that remote working environment, even if you were still, meeting with clients, going to clients. A lot of things happened that forced us into trying to figure out how to be able to work from a more remote capacity. And a lot of the software that either was in place or has now been put into place really makes that a lot easier. And gives us some efficiency too, right? So there's going to be some softwares that I'll give you ideas on and places in your practice that you can think about in terms of how do we actually make a process take us less time. Maybe this person doesn't have to manually do this process anymore. The whole point of this, especially from the perspective of a small practice where you just don't necessarily have the bodies to spread out the responsibilities all of the time, is how do we use these softwares in a cost-efficient way and just in a time-efficient way as well. The other reason that I really love having this conversation is collaboration opportunities. And I think that this is something that we're seeing more and more of post-pandemic as well. I've actually talked about this in some other webinars that especially in accounting and even more especially in the land of tax, it's getting more and more difficult for us to find and hire qualified people to help to grow our practice. And what I'm seeing more and more of, and honestly our practice is using more and more of as well, is these collaborations with other small practitioners. So you might have someone else that has left a firm to go out on their own. They're now running their own remote practice, maybe out of their house or a small office. Either way, that whole dynamic of what people are doing in terms of their workload every day, that has shifted. We're seeing a lot more of these sort of home-based entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, or that gig economy worker, where people are working a lot more as contractors in various capacities than they were prior to 2020. And a lot of that is driven by the technology and the ability to do so. And so if you're thinking, I need a new full-time tax manager, I need this position to be filled, and you're having a really difficult time hiring, a collaborative opportunity with someone else who would work in the capacity of a contractor is a great opportunity. Provide some cost savings. Usually you're getting a higher level of knowledge. Those things are all really great for your practice, but in order to do that, you have to have the technology capable of making sure that that information sharing is happening, and especially in our industry, that that information sharing is happening as in a secure way. And so that's where these cloud-based solutions can be hugely helpful as well. And then in terms of loss prevention, we've seen everything as large as some of the natural disasters that happened. Last year, Florida was granted an automatic extension because of the hurricane situation. So you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're losing data. Could be as simple as your employee takes their laptop home and it gets stolen out of their car. Any information that is being saved directly onto computers, whether they be desktops, laptops, doesn't matter. If that information is not saved on a cloud-based server, once you've lost that computer, you've potentially lost access to that data. So that's certainly not a situation that we want to be in. And cloud solutions is one of the ways that we can help to eliminate that risk of loss of data. And then competitive advantage. So again, like I said, I'm going to give you some ideas and areas that you can look at in your practice to actually leverage cloud software to help make your practice more efficient. One of the number one things I still hear from tax clients is that they are leaving their prior CPA because the CPA didn't get back to them. They were not responsive. It took them months and months and months to get their tax return done. And I feel that pain deeply within my soul, but I also want to help you try to retain your clients and help to give you that leg up on efficiency in a way that prevents those clients from that situation happening to you where you're able to turn things around faster, where you're able to have that competitive advantage of getting back to your clients on a timely basis because you've gained some efficiencies in other areas of your practice. So when I say cost, I mean, obviously we do have to assess the cost of the software, but just to give you some more basis as to why we're going to talk about these things, why they're so critical for you to really take the time to assess within your firm. A study done just last year of over 35,000 businesses showed that there was an annual cost savings of 30%. Actually, it was a little bit more than this when moving to cloud-based software and storage. So not a lot of practices, I don't think anymore, have like server rooms and things like that in their office. Maybe you do, but paying for server storage is obviously expensive. That's part of the cost built into a lot of these softwares. Paying for software to actually be individually installed on machines can be costly. And I'll skip down a line where I'm saying save time on IT maintenance and reduce IT uptime. When your IT team does not have remote access to your machines, remote access to your software and your data, that can take longer in a situation where you need help from the IT team. So having everything be accessible remotely and instantaneously is one way that you can reduce the amount of time on maintenance, and that can reduce downtime. And then, of course, when we're talking about risk of loss, or in the event that there is a natural disaster, or the event that just your office is flooded or without power. Gary and I were just talking before we hopped on. I live in southern Maine. We've had some very large storms this year and several days without power. And so in that situation, if everything that I needed to work on was housed in one physical location and not able to be mobile and remotely accessible the way that my cloud software offers me to be, that's a lot of downtime in a small practice. An average downtime per incident costs a practice about $5,600 per minute. So that average, of course, includes some larger practices as well. But when you just think about the amount of time that your practice is potentially down for any reason, where something happened to someone's laptop, someone couldn't access something, that's a huge cost savings if we're able to prevent that downtime from happening in the first place. So options in the cloud. So these are some of my favorites. They're certainly not the only, but these are most of the ones that we work with. And I'll just kind of go through and touch base on them, what they do, why you want to use them, why you want to consider using them, how they might fit into your practice. If you have any questions on these specifically, feel free again to pop your questions in the chat. And just as Gary mentioned, if you can just tell me which software specifically you're asking about, because there's a few on this slide. So QuickBooks Online and Xero. Interestingly, I just saw a survey last week that said that a lot of practitioners are still using QuickBooks Desktop. So we've certainly moved away from QuickBooks Desktop in our practice to QuickBooks Online. I think that helps for a variety of reasons. I will say that from an accounting perspective, I still deeply love QuickBooks Desktop, just from an ease of use as an accountant myself. But QuickBooks Online makes all of the data accessible to you and to your client 24/7. So that makes it a lot easier for you to pop in when you're ready to work on things. It makes it easier for the client to have access to it at the same time. So maybe they're sending out their invoices, they're, marking their invoices as paid, collecting on their receivables, things like that. But you're able to still see that information in real time. So if you need to hop in for tax prep, tax planning, maybe they asked you a question, you need to go in and look at the financial statements to be able to answer them. Rather than having to consistently wait for a backup of QuickBooks Desktop, softwares like QuickBooks Online and Xero make your clients' financial data accessible to you, like I said, around the clock. And when we talk about Tax Planner Pro in a minute, I will also highlight, why that is a great boost in terms of efficiency. Great question, George. How can we comply with record retention laws and regulations when service providers like Intuit will not provide a way to back up our systems to our computer equipment under our control? So I think that's a great question. And maybe you can clarify for me a little bit more. all of the softwares are different. So I will tell you that whenever I go in for a specific project for our client, so let's just take tax prep, for example. I'm obviously going to pull down copies of the general ledger, the trial balance, the balance sheet, the income statement. I'm going to pull down hard copies of all of those financial statements that I'm using for tax prep. And that's going to be stored in our internal files, either in Excel or PDF or both, however you like to have them for your tax preparation work papers. In terms of actual liability for the backup of the information, that is software provider specific. And those are questions that you have to ask the software provider and that you would definitely have to read in the fine print in terms of who's responsible for data loss, who's responsible for backing up that system, et cetera, et cetera. I will also tell you that I recommend to our clients that they do periodic backups, even of their cloud-based software. So if they are running QuickBooks Online or Xero, if you have not used Xero or if you've not heard of Xero, it functions very similar to QuickBooks Online. It's a cloud-based accounting software that you would use very similar to QuickBooks Online, where you're doing, categorization of transactions, bank reconciliations, financial statements, journal entries, et cetera. I recommend to all of our clients that they do backups of that information on a regular basis, probably not less than monthly, and that they basically are pulling down at least a full copy of their complete general ledger once a month and saving that outside of the cloud. And that just gives them something in case there ever were to be an issue. But like I said, the actual liability for data loss, if something were to happen with these cloud-based softwares, is specific to the individual software provider. They all have their own fine print in terms of what they're responsible for if there's an issue. Obviously, for your internal records and your work papers, I would still recommend that you're keeping copies of the work papers that you're pulling out of these systems, the information that you're pulling out of these systems to use. So let me know if that answers your question or if there's more detail that I can answer for you for that. So I just kind of talked about Xero, very similar to QuickBooks Online. HubDoc is another one that I like. I believe that this one is really helpful for your clients in terms of record retention. And if you are a practice who is also doing bookkeeping, this is extremely helpful from the bookkeeping perspective as well. So QuickBooks Online has their own version of this, but Xero does not. So HubDoc integrates with both QuickBooks Online and Xero, but a lot of our Xero clients use this and like this. HubDoc is basically an integration app where your clients can take pictures of their receipts directly from their phones. They can actually categorize the receipts right from that app, and then it will integrate with the accounting software. So for example, if my client just went to the gas station and they need to scan a copy of their gas receipt, they take a picture using the HubDoc app right from their phone. They can categorize it right there as gas. The system will send that transaction to either QuickBooks Online or Xero. And again, QuickBooks has their own version of this app that is QuickBooks specific. But HubDoc is free to use if you are a Xero client and integrates beautifully. It will create a transaction in the accounting software, put it in the correct category, and then match it to the bank transactions when they download as well. And that HubDoc serves as record retention for actually copies of electronic copies of receipts and invoices. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of our clients like this, is because they can actually sort, filter into folders and categories these HubDoc receipts and invoices. So when you have clients, especially ones that are difficult to get them to save their documentation and save their receipts, HubDoc is a really simple tool that you can recommend that they use. It's helpful to them for the record retention. And then you, as their provider, can also have access to it, similar to QuickBooks Online or to Xero, so that if you had a question about something, I'm thinking like everything that goes into repairs and maintenance and whether or not it needs to be capitalized, you're able to actually go in and see the real original physical copies of those receipts or invoices. And that makes it a lot faster for us to answer those questions, as opposed to having to send them to the client who might not understand exactly what we're asking for or why we're asking for it. And it gives you, again, that 24/7 access to those receipts and invoices. So if there's a question on our end or on their end, it makes it a lot easier for us to have access to the data and answer those questions. Pro Series and Pro Connect. I've used a variety of different softwares. I've used Drake, I've used CCH Tax Access, I've used Pro System FX. For me personally, I think that Pro Series and Pro Connect is that beautiful middle of the road package, middle of the road price. It's not the Cadillac, but I think it's a step above some of the other softwares. So I personally love it in our practice. I've been using it for years. Everybody has their favorite tax software, but having your tax software have the ability to be accessed remotely in the cloud can help you for a variety of reasons. One, especially in terms of growth, we talked about that collaborative relationship at the beginning of the presentation. If you're having a difficult time hiring full-time employees for this tax season, especially that you need help with during busy season, maybe you're not planning to have them for the rest of the year. Maybe you're looking for a specific skill level and you're having a difficult time finding a full-time employee. Having your tax software be able to be accessed remotely from anywhere gives you the ability to collaborate with anyone who's a good fit. So I can collaborate with a practice owner out in California who might be the perfect person to do the manager level review on all of my tax prep this year. And all I need to do is give her a login to my remotely accessible cloud-based tax system, and she's able to access all of those returns. So again, these softwares are just some of my personal favorites. There's other softwares out there that will provide similar functions. And then of course you have, cost benefit analysis that you have to do, but that is definitely one of the benefits of Pro Series and Pro Connect. Zapier, I love. If you're not familiar with it, highly recommend that you check it out. That software actually is an integration software that allows many other softwares to integrate with each other. So I'll give you an example because I also have Better Proposals up here. I love Better Proposals for sending electronic engagement letters to clients. You can create templates. They're easy to send out. They're electronically signed, electronically saved. You can create, they call them zaps. So you can use Zapier to create zaps where all the way, this is where a nice sort of practice management sales function comes in. If you have a client maybe book a call from your website, it will capture that person's email. You can zap that email address into your newsletter database in something like MailChimp, which is not up here, but also a great cloud-based software for managing your contact list. And then it can also zap from Better Proposals into a data management system. So basically that process of moving a client from a prospect through to a signed engagement letter and making sure that those engagement letters are signed, making sure that they have a contact that's created in your database as they become a new client. Zapier is a tool that can integrate with your existing software to make sure that all of that manual process starts happening automatically for you. So that's a really beautiful thing, especially because those administrative tasks can add up and become time consuming. And so taking some of that out of the picture, especially in a small practice, can be really helpful. Canopy and TaxDome, both really great in terms of client portal, data management, securely sending files. Both of them offer KBA signatures. So you can actually save copies of your client's tax returns in those, send them to your client for approval, have them sign them right there in that software. And then both you and the client have access to that information, again, 24/7. So saves you when the client calls you back and asks you for a copy of last year's tax return. It's right there in their portal for them. Both of them have really great mobile apps, so accessible to your clients 24/7 on their phones as well. So those are some great practice management tools. JotForm. This one is, there's some others that I like a little bit better. TaxDome does this automatically inside of their system, but JotForm is something that you can actually use for free depending on how many you're sending out. And it basically allows you to create a template, like a questionnaire. So if you wanted to send out your required tax return questions to your clients, like, did you own cryptocurrency last year? give me your driver's license number. Would you like to have direct deposit? All of those things that you have to be asking when you're preparing tax returns, you could create one template with all those required questions, and you simply send your clients the link to the JOT form. They fill it out, and then you receive a nice categorized list back of the contact name and all of their responses to that. And again, JOT form is a free software, so that one's really helpful in terms of making sure that you're getting those questions out to your clients in a way that is easy and quick for them to respond and get them back to you. So again, that whole follow-up process, we all know how painful it is. It's time consuming when you're working on a return and you get stopped for silly things like someone didn't answer the cryptocurrency question. And then Tax Planner Pro, this is the one where I said, I think this is really helpful to be utilizing QuickBooks Online and Xero. Both of them will integrate with Tax Planner Pro. The beautiful thing about this software is that it will pull your client's financial statement information directly from either one of those accounting softwares. It will also connect with tax software like Pro Series, where you can upload the prior year return, and it will actually take their current financial statement information as compared to their prior year return and give you a draft of a tax planning scenario that you can then manipulate, change, work with your client on to be able to make your tax planning projections a lot faster, more efficient. It spits out some really beautiful reports that you can actually give to your clients so that they have a physical deliverable as part of their tax planning service. And again, because it integrates with those softwares, getting the data in does not need to be done manually, which is the most beautiful part about that process. Any place that we can cut down the manual work is absolutely key. So then how do you decide which software is the best one for you? Obviously cost. We need to make sure that this is software that's going to fit into your firm's budget. I always look for integrations. So the thing about a lot of these softwares is that they can tend to start to overlap with each other. So you might be paying for two different softwares. They both do the same thing, but maybe one has one feature and another one has another feature, and that's why you're paying for them both separately. That might be okay, but you want to look for as much integration as possible. Software that integrates with other things that we're already using, like QuickBooks, like Xero, like Pro Series, those are really key softwares for running our practice. So any integration to the major components that I'm already working with is definitely going to be a deciding factor in terms of what's the best cloud software for me. What they offer in terms of training, how much training do they offer? Do they have an easily accessible training database like videos, webinars, things like that in terms of getting the software up and running, best practices, how to make sure I'm using it efficiently? Because again, efficiency being my last bullet point here, the whole point of software integration is not just for me to spend more money on fancy pieces of software. It's the point is to have that software really function and as if it was another human inside of our practice. So in place of me hiring another full-time person to do X, Y, and Z tasks, these softwares are really meant to provide that level of automation and efficiency for me. For me, training is super, super key because I don't want to pay for something that we're not able to utilize efficiently or that we're not able to figure out. So I will actually give a free shout out to TaxDome on that. I think that they have one of the best training programs out there in terms of integrating their software. They allow you to book a free 45-minute call with them whenever you need a question answered or whenever you need some efficiency in terms of how do I set this up and use this in the system. So really love that. So ask questions about what training is available, for how long, is it free, is there a cost, and really look at those integrations to help you decide what is the best software fit for you. So I'll just take a breath for 1 second. I'll pause and see if there's any questions on anything I've presented so far. Give everyone about 10 seconds because we are right at the 12:30 mark, and I want to give you your next steps in terms of what you can actually implement today. Get you rolling before the April 15th deadline. So what I recommend And maybe some of these heavier lifts are great things for you to do after the end of tax season, but make a list of all of your software, circle any that's not cloud-based. So that's obviously going to be the first place that you want to tackle, is anything that's not currently in the cloud. You want to look at what your current software maintenance costs are. So we talked about that IT uptime. How much time are you spending on repairs, maintenance, installing, reinstalling, licensing fees, so that you can start to do a cost analysis in terms of what's the best fit for you. Examine areas that still require paper and other hard documents. So any place in your practice that you're still using paper or other hard documents, that's a spot where you can look to see if there's a cloud-based solution that can replace some of that for you. And then make a list of any time-consuming processes. So we're all going through that pain of not having enough hours in the day right now. So start to think about what are the time-consuming processes that are eating up the majority of your time, and look at whether or not there's a cloud-based solution that might be able to replace or automate some of that. Those are really great places to start in terms of finding efficiency within your practice. George, good question. Do you know if the IRS has addressed cloud services as a backup and retention measure? So I can't point you in a specific direction without going to the IRS website. Again, like I said, each individual software has their own terms and conditions in terms of what the backup process is, what the data retention is, and then anything that we are using for our internal work papers, I'm obviously making sure that that is going to be saved into our internal files. And so those are things that you can ask about as well as you're analyzing each individual piece of software, is what are the liability terms in terms of backup and retention. Our internal files are obviously backed up by our IT team, and that's why I'm always making sure that our work papers are full and complete in terms of the information that we would need to support our projects. And then you'd have to ask each individual software what their retention policies are in terms of that data management, because they are all going to be different. I can tell you that kind of just weird snafu things, that typically you have more coverage when you're paying for a software than when it's free. So for example, Dropbox is a great one that I know this is true about. If you're using the free version of Dropbox, they have very limited liability to you in terms of data retention or data loss, versus if you are paying for a paid version of the software, their liability is different. So those are good things to ask and to look at. But of course, like I said, always recommend that you're saving everything into your own internal files that you need to support the projects that you're working on, like tax prep and tax planning. All those work papers should be saved, and you should have your own backup methodology. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, and here's my contact information. So if you think of any questions later today, you can feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email. That QR code will also take you directly to our website. Good. Thank you so much, George. I appreciate it. I'm glad that they're helpful. And also, before I forget, I wanted to mention that next month's Tax Talk is going to be on research and development credits, and it will certainly be from the perspective of smaller business clients and smaller practitioners. This is one that I think that we overlook a lot as smaller practitioners, because the mindset is that those are credits more focused on larger corporations. So we'll talk about what they actually are, who actually qualifies for the credit, what expenses qualify for the credit, and how to work with your clients that might be eligible to receive those. And with that, we'll wrap it up.
All right, I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll only be one, but of the list, you had a list of softwares, and then you had kind of next steps.
Yeah.
If there was, and I know it's going to be different for every firm because everybody's in a different place within their business, but what would be the number one thing that you would implement or that you would look at? Again, generally speaking, everybody's different, but is there a way to? Did
Yeah,
I miss
I
something?
I think like an overall like practice management tool, like something that houses like all of your client contact information, functions also as like a client portal for that information sharing back. And for us this year, we just switched over to TaxDome this year. I've tried some other softwares, and this one is far and away one of my favorites so far. Um, so I'll give out a shameless plug for them because I just think that they do a really great job. That they have like engagement letter templates already in there, tax organizer templates already in there, and everything is able to be sent and received from that one spot. So for us, especially during tax season, I think that communication is the piece that starts to take up the majority of our time. How do we timely and efficiently collect information from our clients? How do we timely and efficiently get it back out to them? And because that takes so much time, it's really critical to find a tool that helps to automate some of that, eliminate some of it, and those types of practice management tools that allow for electronic organizers, electronic communication to all be immediately saved within one client's file instead of in all of these different places. You know, some's in email, some's in Teams, it's all over the place. That has really, really made a huge difference in terms of time savings in our practice this year.
Number one would be practice management. Now, someone did, Tara just asked, sorry about the dog in the background, asked, are the documents fillable? I'm assuming she's talking about the items. Sorry, I'm gonna have to mute.
Yeah, so I talked about a couple of different ones. So a couple of these softwares have fillable documents. So JotForm was the free one that I talked about. They're fillable, yes. So you can do yes, no questions with radio buttons. You could do fillable questions where like you can ask the direct deposit question. You can do a fillable answer of like, if you said yes to direct deposit, please provide your account number and your routing number, things like that. Organizers specifically, UltraTax has a nice customized fillable organizer to import from the portal to the software. Yes, so far Liscio does not have that ability and clients do not like the manual process. Yes. So, Tara, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I agree with you. I was not crazy about Liscio either. It does not have as much integration as some of the other ones. I know other practitioners who love UltraTax for that reason. Yes, the TaxDome organizers are fillable. You can create a free fillable organizer in JotForm. It's just a little bit more labor intensive to set up the template in JotForm because they're not automatically there. Canopy, I believe, does the same thing. So there's a couple of them. Carbon will also have fillable organizers as well. I think the really nice thing about TaxDome is that it actually allows your client to attach documents to the answer for each question. So if you're asking, you know, like, did you have W-2 income this year? And they say yes, they can actually attach that document right there. And interface is very friendly. I think so. Yes. So hopefully that helps answer your question. And Amanda, does TaxDome integrate with tax softwares? To my knowledge, the answer to that is no, but that would be a great question to ask them. And maybe Gary and I can bat our eyelashes at them and get them to actually do a webinar with us on their software if there's interest, and they can answer those questions for us.
I'll have to go to the Lash Lounge or somewhere like that to get eyelashes to where they're batable.
But yeah, right. we can do another webinar on maybe our organizers specifically, because they are for sure a source of pain and agony during tax season. That much I know.
All right, well, Christine, thank you so much. We certainly appreciate you taking time out of tax season here, and thank you everybody who attended for taking a little bit of time out of your tax season as well. We do have, if you go out to Insightful Accountant or Tax Practice News, we do have a very short, if you want another 2-minute break, survey that we're asking, just trying to get a pulse of the market. It's just 5 questions, very quick, easy to answer. If you wouldn't mind filling those in or answering those for us, that'd be great. We're gonna have that up probably for another week or so. Just trying to get, again, just a pulse of the market right now. So thank you again, Christine. Thanks everybody for attending, and we will see you very soon.
Have a good afternoon.